Hello, I'm going to be talking to you today about the phonological awareness screening test. Some things you need to know is that this presentation may differ from information if you have a copy of Equipped for Reading Success, and this is the book. It is not required for the course. I do have an older version. I also ordered some newer versions, and there's a couple of things that have been revised, but I found an error in one of the past screeners, so I contacted David Kilpatrick, and they're going to work on updating the website. That hasn't occurred yet, so the information, I would check back on the website, thepasttest.com. The information there is going to be updated, and that will have the most recent information. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about what is the phonological awareness screening test, which is also referred to as the PAST. Why would you want to give it? How do you give it, score it, and interpret the results? All right, what is the phonological awareness screening test, or the PAST? This was developed by Dr. David Kilpatrick to evaluate phonological awareness skills. Its purpose is really to determine the child's level of phonological awareness. It measures the syllable, onset rhyme, basic, and advanced phoneme levels. There are 4 forms. As you can see on my example, I have form A showing, and you're going to notice that if you look down at the levels, the one at the syllable level actually starts with level D. That's because this test was adapted and it originally came from test created by McGinnis and Rosner in 2003, and they had some matching and one-to-one correspondence. David Kilpatrick felt that the research didn't support using those parts of the screener, so that's why he didn't include it on his test. Each form is 2 pages long, and all the items are timed to check automaticity. So why use the phonological awareness screening test? It assesses automaticity. That's being able to do something instantly, effortlessly, and without conscious thought. The research supports that a lack of automaticity is related to a lack of progress in word identification. And this is really important because at our centers, we're seeing that there's not a high rate of transfer to word identification. So we're hoping that if we can start using this screening test and implementing some activities to help our children, we're going to see that rate of transfer increase. And as you can see, it says a child really cannot decode efficiently unless they're proficient or they have the automatic phoneme skills. You may notice if you're working with a child and you're giving them some phonemic awareness activities, or even when you're spelling, they start looking up to the left or they look up to the right, you know that that child is not automatic. What they're doing is they're thinking about it in their head. So for example, if you gave them the word cat and you said, say cat, and the child says cat, now say cat, but take away k, and you see the child start looking up to the left or the right, what that child is doing is they're actually spelling it in their head. They're thinking cat. C-A-T. Take away K, that's K. So I have A-T left. And then they answer at. So they're not automatic. They're not able to just quickly recall the answer. Those are the kids that you can notice when you're giving the assessment or when you're having them spell, that they're visualizing it in their head. Some other reasons why we might want to use the phonological awareness screening test. It is a screener, so it can be given more frequently to measure phoneme level manipulation skills. And that's really important because that includes deletion and substitution. They're the advanced forms of phonemic awareness. And you can see here that children, the average readers, can demonstrate automaticity at the phoneme level by 3rd grade. But that would really be segmentation and blending. So if we really want to see if a child has phonemic awareness skills, we want to check their advanced phonemic awareness. And that's why David Kilpatrick only includes those skills in his screener. He doesn't work with the lower level skills because he wants to figure out quickly, without having the child go through a lot of testing, whether or not they are automatic with the advanced phoneme levels. Some more reasons why you might want to give the phonologic awareness screening test. It can be quickly administered. It takes about 5 to 15 minutes to administer. You're going to see at the end with the two examples, one of the examples that we're going to practice took 5 minutes and the other one takes 7 minutes. So it's pretty quick. There's a routing procedure that speeds administration. So you can skip some of the items if the child is automatic. And there's a discontinue rule. So if the child continues to make mistakes, you're going to stop. You're not going to continue the test. It is unique in that the children receive corrective feedback for every incorrect item. So if they make a mistake, you're going to give them the answer. And that's clearly given to you how to do that on the actual test. There's clear item scoring, and we'll go over that. There's an interpretation guide that has the approximate developmental levels, and it has been field tested for over 17 years. It correlates with the CTOPS elision test, subtest, but it provides additional detailed information. And we're not going to use it in place of the C-test at the centers. It's just something that we can use. It's a curriculum-based measure that we can use to help us guide our curriculum with our students. We still want to give the norm reference CTOP. It has high sensitivity and specificity. That means that the test is going to target or identify those children that are the true positives and those children that are the true negatives. So it's going to tell us which children really have the phoneme proficiency and which children don't. Okay, so let me just check here if there's any questions. All right, so how do you give the phonologic awareness screening test? You want to make sure you know the child's grade prior to screening. This is important because knowing the grade helps you with the routing procedure. If you have a child that's homeschooled and you're not sure what grade they're in, ask the parents what grade they would be in if the child were attending public schools. You want to make sure you carefully read the directions. That's the Chapter 11 handout. It is on the website, and I also have emailed it to you. You want to practice giving the screening with your colleagues. I actually practiced with my daughter, and I practiced with some friends and family members to make sure that I knew how to give it, because that keeps you moving through the assessment. You want to make sure that not only you know how to give the screener, but you know how to pronounce the sounds. In certain sections, levels F through M, you're going to use letter sounds. Where they have the lowercase letters, you're going to use the short vowel sounds. So it might say when you change A to I. And then exception L, you're going to use the uppercase letters to use in that case, or not level L, level J. So it might say something about letter change A to a different sound, but you're going to use the long vowel sounds for level J. You're going to give the items from left to right, just like you would read. There are no practice items. However, you can give feedback for every incorrect item, and there is standard correction provided on the test at each level. You are permitted to give positive feedback or positive reinforcement. You can encourage the child. Just be careful. Don't teach or demonstrate any item. Don't use manipulatives. Don't use Elkonin boxes, paper clips or chips or anything like that. Don't provide an explanation during the screening, such as you're going to take away the first sound in these words. And you want to move through the screener at a pretty quick pace. That's because you want to keep the child moving. You don't want the child to get bored. If you have a child that has some processing issues or memory issues, you want to keep them moving through it so they don't get frustrated or get stuck. All right, so timing. You want to assess automaticity, and to do that, you're going to time all the items. After you give the prompt, You're going to count 1001, 1002. If the child responds correctly within 2 seconds before you get to the 2, it counts as an automatic response. You will write an X in the blank next to the word to indicate the response was automatic. If the child answers correctly, but after 2 seconds, you're going to put a 1 next to the item to indicate it was correct, but it wasn't automatic. They did not get the answer correct within 2 seconds. And if the child answers incorrectly, you're going to put a 0 in the item. It is a good idea to practice with a stopwatch or with your phone to make sure that you have the timing down, that your 2 seconds is matching the 2 second time period. You're not counting too fast or you're not counting too slow. And we're going to actually practice that right now. So you should see in your screen a go box at the top right-hand corner. I'm going to say go, and when I say go, I want you to start counting 1001, 1002, and my box will count down to see if your counting matches 2 seconds. Are you ready? Go. Okay, how did you do? Did your timing match with the 2 seconds? Again, if you were too fast, you might need to slow down a little bit. If you were too slow, you might need to speed up a little bit with your counting. You might be wondering why 2 seconds? Well, automatic responding typically takes less than 2 seconds. So if we're giving the child 2 seconds to respond, that's more than enough time to determine if the child has automaticity. When you're timing, if you reach 1005 and the child has not responded, you can repeat the item. But you want to go back and resume your counting back at 1001. If the child responds correctly within 5 seconds of the second chance, you can score them with a 1, meaning they were correct. If the child does not respond after the second 5-second count, score the item as incorrect and provide correct feedback. An item is only scored as automatic if they get it within the two seconds of the first time you give the item. Any other time, you're going to be marking it either as just correct or incorrect. The reason we give a child a second chance is because sometimes children forget what was asked. But you might have a child that's a little slower at processing. It gives them a chance to respond, to get it correct, even though they might not be automatic. So for example, if you look at your form, if you look at Form A, the first item, D1, bookcase, you say to the child, say bookcase. The child says bookcase. Then you start counting. Then you say bookcase, but don't say book. As soon as you say that, start counting 1001, 1002. And if you keep counting to 1005, you're going to repeat the item. Say bookcase to the child. So even if the child has the item correct, the second time within 2 seconds, since you had to repeat the item, it's not counted as automatic. It's only counted as correct. If you misspeak a word or you skip an item, you want to go on to the next one as long as it was not the last item at that level. For example, you skip I1 and you do I2 first. You should then go back and do I1. So we're looking at the example here. Suppose you get to this level and you say to the child, say wheat. And the child says wheat. Now say wheat, but don't say t. And then the child says we. And you realize that you skipped I1. You want to go ahead and continue with I2. Give the child niece, give the child drive, then go back and do I1. Go back to went and do went. If the child is automatic, when you go back to I1, you're going to mark it as an X. If it's the last item on the level, suppose you skip wheat by mistake and you start with niece. You give the child niece and you give the child drive. Go back and give wheat. But suppose you skipped wheat and niece and you end up giving drive first and then realize you have to go back and do the other ones. You just go ahead and do that and give it to the child. If by chance you mispronounce or misspeak a word, suppose you want to give the child drive, but you say to the child, say dry. I mean, say drive. Well, technically you gave the child the answer, but you still want to continue follow through with giving that item. You have to use your best judgment on whether or not the child is automatic or correct if they get it correct. I would think if they got wheat and niece automatic, then I would score drive as automatic. But if they weren't automatic in the 2 previous items, then I might not score it as automatic because you technically gave them the answer. So you really have to try to decide using your best judgment what was truly automatic and what was correct. You might have an incident where the child accidentally carries over from the previous item. For example, the first item is ran in level J. And you say to the child, say ran. The child says ran. Now say ran, but instead of say and the child says run. And then you move on to the next item. Say kit. The child says kit. Now say kit, but instead of say and the child says rut. The child carried that R sound over from run. It's not a phonological issue, it's more of an attention lapse. So what you should do is just repeat the item. Say to the child again, say kit, have the child say kit. Now say kit, but instead of say If the child gets it correct, you're going to score them with 1 point. They can't receive an automatic score because you repeated the item. And just a note about this level J with ran and run. I know I've had some people ask a question about what do you do with that A because it's not a clear sound. I know it's co-articulated or welded, but when I'm saying to the child, instead of say I do pronounce it as a clear sound, even though in the word ran, it's really not a clear sound. Okay, are there any questions at this point? Let me just check here. Okay, we're going to move on. How do I give the phonological awareness screening test? Well, there's a routing procedure, and we're going to talk about that, but everyone starts at D1. However, children should not be administered all 52 items. The routing procedure works differently at each level. And this is why it's important that you need to know the child's grade. For kindergartners and at-risk beginning first graders, give every item in levels D and E, following the discontinue rule. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Now, we don't have kindergartners coming into the centers. And if we have first graders, they're going to be at-risk beginning first graders because they're coming to the dyslexia center. So I would start any first graders coming to the centers at D1, giving them every item in D and E. So according to David Kilpatrick, for most first graders and all children beyond first grade, if the first item in D1 is automatic, meaning within 2 seconds, skip down to the first item in D2. So I would, for children in second grade and up, I would follow that routing procedure. Give them D1. If they're automatic, skip down and give them the first item in D2. If the first item in D2 is automatic, skip down to the first item in E2. And if that is automatic, you're going to skip down to E3. When you score this later, you're going to score any skipped items at those levels as being automatic. So they'll get 3 out of 3 points, and I'll show you the scoring in a couple minutes. However, if a child has an item that's incorrect or they're not automatic, meaning they got it correct, but it took longer than 2 seconds, you're going to give all the items at that level, and you'll just score it normally. So let me show you in this example here. So suppose this is a child that's in first grade and above. This child says bookcase, or gets bookcase correct. You give them an X. They do it within 2 seconds, so they're automatic. Go down and give them D2, silver. They do that, they're automatic within 2 seconds, go down to E2, umbrella. Automatic within 2 seconds, go down to E3, alphabet. Then on the right-hand side, you can see how it's scored Even though you didn't give all 3 items in D1, they're going to get 3 out of 3 points. The same thing with D2, E2, and E3. Because you followed the routing procedure, so if they're automatic, you're going to assume that they would get all of those items correct. Okay, here's our first poll. What item would you give next based on these responses? This is a first grader. And I'm going to bring up the poll. I'm going to give you a minute here to respond to this question. Would you choose sunset, market, fantastic, or alphabet? Okay. And I see that most people got the answer correct. The correct answer is fantastic. The child had bookcase automatic, so following the routing procedure, you skip down to D2. The child had silver automatic, following the routing procedure, skip down to E2. Umbrella, the child was correct, but was not automatic. So you're not going to skip down and go to alphabet. You would go to the next item to the right, which is fantastic, and give that item to the child. Okay, now let's look at the routing procedure for onset rhyme levels F and G. For kindergarten to second graders, if the first 3 F and G items are automatic, skip the final 2, and you'll score them as automatic. For third graders and up, if the first 2 items in F and G are automatic, skip the final 3 and score all as automatic. If there's any that are incorrect or correct but not automatic, you administer all 5 items. So let's look at this example. This is a second grader. So this second grader had feet correct, cough correct, and tane correct. So the first, following the routing procedure, this second grader had the first 3 correct, so we're going to skip the other 2. Now, I didn't put the score in here, but if I were scoring this, I would give the child 5 out of 5 for correct and 5 out of 5 for automatic. So which item would I give next? I would go down and I would give guide next. If the child was automatic with that one, I would just continue through the rest of them. If the child was not automatic, I would also continue through the rest of them at that level. Okay, here's our second poll. What item would you give next based on these responses? This is a 4th grader. And I'm going to give you a minute to think about this. Which item would you give next? Tame, time, guide, or gum? 10 seconds left. You're still working on the poll. Okay. So which item did you pick? Well, the child was automatic at feet, correct at love, but not automatic. So this child should be given tame next. If the child were automatic with the second item, love, then I would skip down to level G and give guide. Okay, now we're going to look at the routing and discontinue procedure for the phoneme levels H to M. There isn't a routing procedure at this level. So you're going to give all the items at each level. There is a discontinue rule, and the discontinue rule could apply at any of the levels. It's not just at levels H to M. So for the discontinue rule, if the combined correct score on 2 levels in a row is 0, 1, or 2 out of 10, discontinue the test. Consider all items in the levels beyond as incorrect. For example, a child gets only 2 items in level 1 and none in level J. Or not level 1, in level I, and none in level J. So they get a 2 out of 10. Then you're going to discontinue the test, and levels K through M would be scored 0 out of 10 points. So let's look at an example. Think about this. Would you continue giving the screener? So you can go ahead and do this on your head, or if you want to actually, jot it down on scratch paper, you can jot it down on scratch paper. Okay, let's look at the answers. So the child in level H had crane correct and flows correct. So 1 in H1 and 1 in H2. So they had 2 out of 5 correct. And then in level I, the child had 0 out of 5 correct. So the total points was 2 out of 5. So you would stop the screener here, because the discontinue rule is if you have 2 levels in a row and the child scores a 0, 1, or 2 points, you're going to stop the test there. So I just want to see if there's any questions here. Okay. So here's our third poll. Would you continue giving the screener for this one? So you're going to look at level J and K. Can you do this in your head or on scratch paper, but would you continue giving this screening? If you forget the discontinue rule or the routing procedures, that's why I made the quick guide to help you out. So you always have that to refer to have in front of you. I use it when I'm giving the test. So if I, get to a certain point and the child's making errors, I can check and make sure, should I be continuing? Should I, stop? It's just a way to help you as you're assessing the child. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll. All right, so looking at this, for level J, the child had 3 out of 5 correct. And for level K, the child had 1 out of 5 correct. So the child had 4 out of 10. So you should continue giving the screener, because it is only if they get for 2 levels in a row, 0, 1, or 2 points, then you're going to stop the screener. This is just a review how to score the phonological awareness screening test. If it's incorrect, they get a 0. If it's correct but not automatic, that means the child responds correctly, but it takes the child more than 2 seconds, they get a 1. If it's automatic, the child responds correctly within 2 seconds, they get an X. Then what you'll do is you'll count all the 1s and X's and put the totals in the correct column. You'll count all the X's and put those totals in the automatic column. So let's look at this example. This is a 5th grader. Again, jot down your answers on scratch paper. How many would the child get correct? How many would the child get automatic for each of these levels? I'm going to give you a minute to work on this. Okay, so let's look at the results. So this was a 5th grader. This child had D1 bookcase automatic. So I followed the routing procedure. I moved to D2. This child had silver automatic. Following the routing procedure, moved to E2. This child had umbrella correct. So I'm going to give the rest of the items. Fantastic was automatic. October was incorrect. Alphabet was correct. Saturday was correct. And tricycle was automatic. So now looking at how to score it, D1, use the routing procedure, so the child got 3 correct and 3 automatic. Even though you didn't give Sunset and Spaceship, you're going to count them as being automatic. Same thing with D2. You only gave Silver, but you're going to count Market and Gentle as correct and automatic. For E2, correct, you're counting the 1s and the X's, that's 2 points. For automatic, you're counting the X's, that's 1. The child only had fantastic automatic. E3, you're counting the 1s and the X's to figure out how many are correct, that would be 3 points. Automatic, you're counting the X's, tricycle is the only one, that's automatic. Count up your totals, this child had 11 out of 12 correct, 8 out of 12 automatic. Now that will usually be what you're going to find out, that the child has more correct than they have automatic, because that just tells you that they're getting some things correct, they're just not at the point where they're automatic yet. And we want to really make sure that the children get to the automatic level. All right, so how do I score the screening test? Each level has 2 scores, a correct score and an automatic score. A level is considered passed if all the items or all items except 1 are correct. So the child gets a 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 3. A level is considered automatic if all items or all items except 1 are responded to automatically. So a 4 out of 5, a 2 out of 3. Now I want to point out that there is a discrepancy with them in the manuals and in the directions in chapter 11. It states that the child needs to get a 3 out of 3. Again, I was in touch with David Kilpatrick's, I emailed him, his assistant got back to me, and she said that that was a mistake. It is supposed to be if they get a 2 out of 3. However, if they get a 3 out of 3, then you really know that they also have it. They're very automatic with it. But they can be considered automatic with a 2 out of 3. So that's a typo that's in the manuals and it's still online right now. They're working on fixing that. So again, as I said, you may have a child that passes a level with a correct score, but they're not automatic at that level. And only the levels passed at the automatic level do not require additional instruction. So this is a curriculum-based measurement. We're using this to help drive our instruction. So we want to see what skills do we need to work on with the child. If they're not automatic at a skill, that's a skill you need to work on. Let's check and see if there's any questions right now. Okay. Passing a level. So once you have the scores tallied up on the right-hand column, you're going to transfer that information to the top of the page. Child receives a score for how many correct, 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 3 are needed, and how many automatic, again, 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 3, at the syllable, onset rhyme, and phoneme levels. You'll complete the highest correct level and the highest automatic level. For most children, the highest correct level will be higher than the highest automatic level. And if there's any levels that were not passed below the highest level, you'll make sure that you note them or write them down, because those are levels that you're going to want to go back and work on those skills too. So let me show you an example here. In this example, I have a picture of the front of the test so you can see the scoring at the top, but the information on the back of the test is over on the left-hand side. So this child, you can see how they did on the front. They did really well. This particular child was not automatic with some of the multisyllabic words and deleting the first syllable off of them in level E. So that's an area that I would work on with the child. On the back, on level J, the child had 4 out of 5 correct. That was the highest correct level. So I wrote that up at the top of the form. The child was automatic up to level H, but also you can see not automatic at level E. So the highest automatic level was H, but the non-automatic level below the highest automatic level was E. So this child really needs some instruction at level E, working with those multisyllabic syllables. And then I would skip down and I would do some instruction in level I. I'd like you to look at this example and think about these questions. Did the child pass each level? Was the child automatic? Would this child need instruction at either level? So I'm going to give you a minute to think about the answers to those questions. Okay, so looking at this level L, the child was automatic with 4 out of 5 points. So that level was passed. And if they're automatic, then they automatically pass the level. Looking at level M, the child passed that level, but only had 1 out of 5 points as far as looking at automaticity. So that level, the child would need some more instruction because he or she is not automatic in level M. Okay, here's our next poll. Think about this. Would this child need instruction at any of these levels? I'm going to give you a minute to think about this. Ten seconds left. So for this level, the child was correct and automatic in D1. Following the routing procedure, child would move down to D2. Following the routing procedure, move down to E2. But this child was not automatic at E2 or E3. So with this child, he or she would need instruction at level, I would start with level E2. There is a difference between E2 and E3. Do you know what it is? Both delete the first syllable in a 3-syllable word, but the words in E2 have an accent on the second syllable, and the words in E3 have an accent on the first syllable. So the removal of the stressed syllable makes E3 more difficult than E2. How do I interpret the phonological awareness screening test? Here's some final notes. Use the results to guide your instruction. Different levels have different types of manipulation. By 3rd grade, all levels should be passed with automaticity. After 3rd grade, a lack of automaticity at any level may indicate a phonological awareness difficulty. These are approximate grade levels. It's just a guide. It's not a norm test. It's based on studies that show when children developmentally can do certain manipulations. It shouldn't be used to diagnose. So are there any questions about interpreting the phonological awareness screening test? There was a question about if you're using the activities in the book. And again, you do not need to get the book. It's not required. You can come up with your own activities just by looking at the examples that are used on the test. If you're using the book, you can alternate levels. So if a child needs something in D, you can also, give some in D, try one in E, go back to D, and because you want to keep the child moving through the levels, so you don't have to give all the activities at one level. There are a lot of activities in the book if you're using the book, but you don't have to just stay in one level. You can move on if the child is automatic and passing that level. So we're going to practice. So you're going to need to make sure you have your 2 copies of your past Form A, your quick guide to help you with scoring it, something to write with. Make sure you turn up your volume because this is my daughter and she is soft-spoken, or at least she was when I tested her. She's not always soft-spoken, but make sure you turn up your volume so that you're able to hear her as she is going through the test. And once you're done, you're going to score your results and think about where you would actually start providing instruction. We're going to play a word game that starts out easy and gets harder. Are you ready?
Yes.
Say bookcase.
Bookcase.
Now say bookcase, but don't say book.
Case.
Say sunset.
Sunset.
Now say sunset, but don't say sun.
Set.
Say spaceship.
Spaceship.
Now say spaceship, but don't say ship.
Space.
Say silver.
Silver.
Now say silver, but don't say sill.
Silver.
If you say silver without saying sill, you get ver. Say market.
Market.
Now say market, but don't say mar.
Cat.
Say gentle.
Gentle.
Now say gentle, but don't say toll.
Jen.
Okay, going great. Say umbrella.
Umbrella.
Now say umbrella, but don't say
Umbrella.
If you say umbrella without saying you get brella. Say fantastic.
Fantastic.
Now say fantastic, but don't say fan.
Tastic.
Say October.
October.
Now say October, but don't say oct.
October.
Say alphabet.
Alphabet.
Now say alphabet, but don't say owl.
Alphabet.
Say Saturday.
Saturday.
Now say Saturday, but don't say sat.
Day.
Say tricycle.
Tricycle.
Now say tricycle, but don't say try.
Sickle.
Okay, great. Now say feet.
Feet.
Now say feet, but don't say
Feet.
If you say feet without the you get eat. Feet, eat. Say cough.
Cough.
Now say cough, but don't say
Cough.
If you say cough without the k, you get off. Cough, off. Say tame.
Tame.
Now say tame, but don't say t.
Aim.
Say time.
Time.
Now say time, but don't say t.
Time.
If you say time without the t, you get I'm. Time, I'm. Okay, say cone.
Cone.
Now say cone, but don't say k. All right, good. Say guide.
Guide.
Now say guide, but instead of g, say r.
Guide.
If you say guide and change the g to r, you get ride. Guide, ride. Say more.
More.
Now say more, but instead of say th.
More.
If you say more and change the to th, you get door. More, door. Say gum.
Gum.
Now say gum, but instead of g, say
Gum.
If you say gum and change the g to, you get thumb. Gum, thumb. Say lead.
Lead.
Now say lead, but instead of ooh, say s.
Sweat.
If you say lead and change the ooh to s, you get said. Lead, said. Okay, let's try another one. Say feel.
Feel.
Now say feel, but instead of say s.
Feel.
If you say feel and change the to s, you get seal. Feel, seal. All right, you did a great job with this. We're all done for today. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple minutes now to go ahead and figure out number correct, number automatic, and fill in the results at the top. Figure out the highest correct level, the highest automatic level. I'm going to set my timer here. I'm going to give you one more minute to finish this up. Okay, let's look at the results here. Now, I'm certified reading specialist, so just by nature, I like to write down everything the child does. I like to take notes if the child's moving around in their chair or wiggling or not paying attention. I write all those anecdotal notes down. So when she made a mistake, I would write down what she said. That's not required to do that. It's just something that's part of my training, so I do that. And I do feel that it helps me out. I can learn some information by what I'm observing and what the child is saying. So I write down, and I write everything they do and everything they say, I write it down. So she was correct with bookcase, correct with sunset, automatic with spaceship. So for D1, she had 3 correct, 1 automatic, because we're counting the X's for automatic. She missed silver. She was correct with market and correct with gentle. So for D2, she had 2 correct, but none automatic. Looking at level E, E2, she had fantastic automatic. October was correct. So 2 out of 3 correct, 1 out of 3 automatic. For E3, she was automatic with alphabet, correct with Saturday, correct with tricycle. 3 out of 3 correct, 1 out of 3 automatic. Then I looked at the totals. She had 10 out of 12 correct at the basic syllable level, 3 out of 12 correct at the automatic level. Looking at the onset and rhyme level, she had only tame correct and the last one, cone, correct. She did not have any automatic. So 2 out of 5 correct, 0 out of 5 automatic. And then level G, she didn't get any correct, none obviously automatic with that level. I used the discontinue rule and stopped there because looking at F and G, she had 2 out of 10 correct. And with the discontinue rule, if they have 2 levels in a row that are 0, 1, or 2 out of 10 points, you stop for correct number of points. Then what I did is I put all those results at the top. So at the basic syllable level, she had 10 out of 12 correct, 3 out of 12 automatic. Onset and rhyme level, 2 out of 10 correct, 0 out of 10 automatic. And I didn't give the rest of the levels, so those would be scored as 0 out of 10 for the basic phoneme and the advanced phoneme level. Her test total, 12 out of 52 points correct and 3 out of 52 automatic. Her highest correct level was E. There weren't any levels that she passed below the highest, did not pass below the highest correct level. Highest automatic level, there wasn't one. So looking at this, where would I instruct her? I would instruct her starting with D1, starting with syllables and specifically using compound words and deleting the first word of a compound word. Okay, any questions about that? Here's our second practice. This time it's an 8th grader. We're still giving level A. I want you to listen, score your results, think about, did she pass any levels? Was she automatic at any levels? What skill would you work on first? Okay.
We're going to play a word game that starts out easy and gets harder. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, say bookcase.
Bookcase.
Now say bookcase, but don't say book.
Case.
Good. Say silver.
Silver.
Now say silver, but don't say sill.
Ver.
Say umbrella.
Umbrella.
Now say umbrella, but don't say
Umbrella.
Say alphabet.
Alphabet.
Now say alphabet, but don't say owl.
Alphabet.
All right, good job. Say feet.
Feet.
Now say feet, but don't say
Eat.
okay, say cough.
Cough.
Now say cough, but don't say
Off.
say guide.
Guide.
Now say guide, but instead of say
Ride.
say more.
More.
Now say more, but instead of say
Door.
hey, you're doing great. Say sleep.
Sleep.
Now say sleep, but don't say
Eat.
if you say sleep without the s, you get leap. Sleep, leap. Okay? Say crane.
Crane.
Now say crane, but don't say
Cane.
if you say crane without the k, you get rain. crane, rain. Say grew.
Grew.
Now say grew, but instead of g, say t.
Grew.
If you say grew and change the g to t, you get true. Grew, true. Say crane.
Crane.
Now say crane, but instead of k, say t. Say crane.
Crane.
Now say crane, but instead of k, say
Rain.
good. Say flows.
Flows.
Now say flows, but instead of f, say k.
Hose.
If you say flows and change the f to k, you get clothes. Flows, clothes. Okay? Say went.
Went.
Now say went, but don't say t.
When.
Say range.
Range.
Now say range, but don't say t.
Rain.
Say wheat.
Wheat.
Now say wheat, but don't say t.
Wheat.
Say meese.
Meese.
Now say meese, but don't say s.
Me.
Good. Say drive.
Drive.
Now say drive, but don't say
Drive.
good. Okay. Say ran.
Ran.
Now say ran, but instead of say
Ran.
If you say ran and change the to you get run. Ran, run. Say kit.
Kit.
Now say kit, but change the it to
Kit.
If you say kit and change the it to you get cut. Kit, cut. Let's try another one. Say den.
Den.
Now say den, but instead of say
Den.
If you say den and you change the to you get done. Den, done. Say beak.
Beak.
Now say beak, but instead of e, say a. Say beak.
Beak.
Now say beak, but instead of e, say a.
Make.
Good. Say fine.
Fine.
Now say fine, but instead of I, say o.
Phone.
Okay, doing great. Say bread.
Bread.
Now say bread, but don't say r.
Bread.
If you say bread without their r, you get bed. Bread, bed. Say sneak.
Sneak.
Now say sneak, but don't say n.
Sneak.
If you say sneak without the n, you get seek. Sneak, seek. Okay, let's try some more. Say crew.
Crew.
Now say crew, but instead of r, say oo.
Crew.
If you say crew and you change the r to oo, you get clue. Crew, clue. Say scale.
Scale.
Now say scale, but instead of k, say n.
Skein.
If you say scale and change the k to n, you get snail. Scale, snail. Say sneeze.
Sneeze.
Now say sneeze, but change the to
Sneak.
if you say sneeze and change the to you get skis. Sneeze, skis. All right, we're all done. You did a great job working on those.
One thing I want to tell you is I noticed listening to this that there was some lagging in there in my responses, and probably some of her responses too. You have to use your best judgment if you're doing this online and you've got, you're trying to deal with Wi-Fi and Zoom and there's, some lagging going on. Use your best judgment. I could hear a little bit of that going in there. So I'm going to show you my results and they might be a little different than yours just because when I gave it to her, I didn't hear some of the lags that I heard when I replayed this to you right now. So I want to note that I did write down what she said. I also put a little an R with a circle around it. That's just my way of noting that I had to repeat that item. Again, that's not part of the scoring. It's not required that you do that. It's just something that I use to help me. Just lets me know that I had to repeat that item. So looking at level D, she had D1 correct and automatic. I followed the routing procedure. This is an 8th grader. We moved down to D2. That was correct and automatic, moved down to E2. That was correct and automatic, moved down to E3. Correct and automatic, went to level F. That she had to get 2 items correct in level F or automatic, and she was automatic with 2 items, so I skipped the other 3. I moved down to level G, same thing. She had the routing procedure. So let's look on the back side at level H. In H, the only one that she had correct was the one that she repeated, the crane. So she got 1 point for that one. Nothing was automatic. In level I, she got 5 points for correct and 4 points for automatic. Looking at level J, she had the 2 long vowel items correct, but they weren't automatic. So she got 2 points for them being correct. She didn't get any of the short vowels correct. So that's pretty telling to me that she does need to work some more on the middle vowel sound. Level K, she didn't get any correct. Looking at the total number correct with level J and K, she had 2 out of 10. So I discontinued, stopped the test there. Look at the basic syllable level. She had 12 out of 12 correct. That's what I put at the top. 12 out of 12 automatic. I wrote that up at the top in the results. The onset and rhyme level, she had 10 out of 10 correct and 10 out of 10 automatic. So I wrote that at the top. The basic phoneme level, she had 6 out of 10 correct, 4 out of 10 automatic. So I wrote that on the top. And then the advanced phoneme level, she had 2 out of 20 correct and 0 out of 20 automatic. Even though I didn't give her level M or L or M, that would be 0 points, would be counting for that one. So I didn't actually put in the totals for advanced phoneme level down at the bottom, but it would be 2 out of 20. So her test total was 30 out of 52 for correct, 26 out of 52 for automatic. The highest correct level was level I, but she was not she only had 1 out of 5 correct at level H. So that was what I wrote down for level not passed below the highest correct level. And level H has to do with splitting blends, deleting that first sound in a blend. So she could do the final sound in a word in level I, but she couldn't take that blend and pull out the first sound in that. The highest automatic level was the same, level I, and the non-automatic level below the highest automatic level was level H. If you look down at level J, I already talked about that. That was vowel sounds. She needs to work some more on the vowel sounds in words. And level K has to do with deleting the second sound of a blend. So that makes sense. If she couldn't pass level H, she couldn't delete the first sound in a blend. It makes sense she's not going to pass level K. So what would you have her work on? Well, definitely I would start with level level H, excuse me. Do level H, working on words that have a blend and deleting the first sound in a beginning blend. And I would also work on words with the vowel sound, starting with the short vowel sound and work on those, but also doing some words that have the long vowel sound, because she struggled with those levels too. And again, you don't need the book to create your own activities. If you are using the book, you can work on more than one level at a time. You can just alternate between levels. So are there any questions about this practice test? All right, so let's review some things that we talked about. So the what? It's the phonological awareness screening test, or the PAST. It was developed by Dr. David Kilpatrick. He really doesn't go by doctor. I met him multiple times, saw him present. He is very much down to earth. He's really wonderful. If you ever get a chance to go and see him, I highly recommend listening to him. Back on topic, the PAST is a screener to measure a child's phonological awareness. It looks at the syllable, the onset rhyme, basic and advanced phoneme levels. Why would you want to use it? Because it measures automaticity and phoneme manipulation. Phoneme manipulation are those higher level skills, deletion, substitution skills, that if a child can do them, then you know that the child is truly proficient with phonemic awareness. And another reason why is because those skills are correlated with word identification. So if we want to get our children to have carryover in word identification, then we really have to work on those higher level phoneme manipulation skills. How do we give the test? Make sure you read the instructions, the chapter 11, the detailed instructions on how to give the screener, how to score it, and how to interpret the results. Follow the scoring guidelines. An X if it's automatic within 2 seconds of the first try. Remember, you're going to count in your head 1001, 1002. If the child is correct but takes longer than 2 seconds, you'll give them a 1. If they're incorrect, you give them a 0. And you can use the results to guide your instruction. If the child isn't correct, you're also going to make sure that you follow the procedure to correct the child's error. So final questions that I can answer for you that I didn't already answer. There was a question about the website. That's on the resources page. So you can get copies of the test at thepasstest.com. Pretty self-explanatory. I also emailed out the copies. On that website, he does have the Chapter 11 full directions listed. The quick guide is something that I made. It's not on the website, but it's something that you're welcome to use to help you with administering and scoring the test. There's also the Equip for Reading Success website. That's where, if you're interested in ordering the book, you can order the book on that website. There's some more information that you can get on the website. There's some other information, some other charts that I think that you could use if you wanted to keep track of, if you had the book, what lessons you had given, what skills you had given this child. You could, there's some other handouts in there that you could give to the child. There's also some information on copying. You cannot copy from the book. Like I said, you don't need the book. You can use the assessment to guide you in creating your own resources, your own lessons that you want to give to the child. It's not required to have the book. Okay, thank you very much for participating in this webinar. I hope that you learned something. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Cindy Allen Fuss, callen-fuss @cdcinc.org. Thank you.